Hello. As you read To Kill a Mockingbird, you are going to be working on this To Kill a Mockingbird active journal. And how you should approach this is you should, after reading a chapter, you should go to your journal and jot down some notes. Now, it's not just going to be any notes. I don't just want you to put plot points. I want you to have a specific focus. So that's what I'm going to talk about so you know exactly how this journal is supposed to be set up. And then chapter 1 has been done for you so you can get a good idea of what yours should look like. So here are the directions. When reading a novel in AP, it helps to be an active reader who is always questioning things. You know there are big and bad themes that an author is trying to express. You know your teacher is going to want you to be able to recognize and discuss these themes. Reading with purpose and actively searching for these themes can help you pay attention more. We all space out when we read, and it can help you understand the big ideas of a book better too. So, as you read To Kill a Mockingbird, I want you to actively journal on a few topics. This just means that when you see something that revolves around a big idea, you mark down evidence that can help you form a greater theme later. You can also put down some random thoughts too, and even have some fun with this as you read. Now, I've color-coded different topics. Reason being is we are going to be writing a paper that does revolve around theme at the end of this unit, or at the end of this story. So what you may want to do is color code your responses, and maybe sometimes you reflect on something that's not one of these big ideas. That's okay. But for instance, I'll show you my example here. You'll notice that I've color-coded it, so later on, if I decide I'm going to write a paper about isolation within the story and come up with a theme statement for isolation, I can go back and anything marked in yellow I know is going to deal with isolation. So the more you put into this journal, the better your themes are going to be later on, and I think the more you're going to get out of this novel. All right, so here are the topics that I want you to focus on as you journal. So look for acts of courage or not being courageous. Look for where privilege comes into play and how it blinds characters at times and influences their opinions and decisions. Look for instances of isolation and how it impacts characters. Look at how poverty affects people in the book. Look at acts of being closed-minded and also being open-minded. And then look for social norms and what happens when people break these social norms. Also, at the end of each chapter, tell me the purpose of that chapter. Why did Harper Lee decide to have it in the book? And to move the plot forward is a terrible answer. So you want to think about, okay, well, was there a certain character in here that really helped get across a theme? Or was this particular chapter one that was really revealing about a certain incident in the story? So try to really think this through, and we're going to be practicing, and I'm going to help you out with the first few journals here. But chapter 1 has been done for you. So chapter 1 has been completed for you and will serve as a model for how you should compose your responses. It may be helpful to color code your journal entry so we know what ideas or concepts from the list is being addressed in your journal. If something stands out to you that is not on the possible topics list above, go with it. I'm going to be passing out motif or big idea bookmarks. So if you see a big idea that's not listed as one of the 6 writing topics here, feel free to address it in your notes. We will use this journal as a jumping off point in our discussion. So again, filling this out is really, really important, whether you're in class or whether you're virtually learning, because we're going to use this in both our Zoom conversations and then also our in-person class conversations. And like I said, this will greatly help you when we go to write the paper later on this semester. All right, so here's an example journal. So you'll notice that I put chapter 1. So that's what you should do. I said this story is told as a flashback. Scout and Jem are debating who's responsible for Jem breaking his arm badly as a child. I only put that because it seemed to be something important, but it doesn't really go with any of the themes. Everything else goes with some of the big ideas that were listed above. Looking at the first few items here, we can see that it lists the page number, which is really helpful when you go back to write about the different themes later on in this semester. And then if you notice, the page numbers are highlighted, and the highlights correspond with the topics that were listed above. So for example, if I scroll down, I see that page 13 through 14 is highlighted in yellow, and that has to deal with isolation and how it impacts characters in the story. So I, for this one, put a direct quote because I thought it seemed like an important quote to list here. However, notice that most of the notes are just brief thoughts on a specific topic. But if you look here, it says, nobody knew what form of intimidation Mr. Radley employed to keep Boo out of sight, but Jem figured that Mr. Radley kept him chained to the bed most of the time. And then here's the part that I focused on. Atticus said no, it wasn't that sort of thing, that there were other ways of making people into ghosts. So the comment I made then is Mr. Radley is going to extreme lengths to isolate his son from the world. And this seems like a very, very prominent example of isolation. So I wanted to put the direct quote in there. But if you look at the other examples, for instance, if I look at page 11, it says the Radley family breaks norms with this town. They do not go to church and keep to themselves. They are clearly seen as outsiders. And so we know that anything having to do with social norms is highlighted in purple here. All right, make sure you look through that example and the different notes on each page. Again, they could just be your reactions, but you want to make sure you're coming back to these big ideas and these topics to journal about. All right, last thing I want to mention is that at the end of each of your journals, you should put the purpose of each chapter. And this is just going to be a couple complete sentences. It doesn't need to be a whole paper, a length of why this chapter is important. Some chapters may seem more important than others, but here's a possible response for the purpose of chapter 1. Lee wants to let the reader know the basics of the town that will be the setting of the book. Southern, modest people who all seem to know each other and are stuck in one place. She then introduces the mystery of who this Boo Radley is, and yet does not give us much information on why he never comes out of the house. The reader is left to draw conclusions and be prompted to continue on to find more out. All right. Now, when you go to do your own journals, you're going to want to go ahead and you'll type chapter 2. And then you'll start journaling chapter 2. Now, one last thing I want to mention is that it is helpful to have these little lines that divide your journals into sections. So if you just go to Insert, and then you go to Horizontal Line, that will pop a line in, and then you can then add lines. So then it says chapter 3, and so on and so forth. So that just makes it so visually it's not all just one blurb. I hope this helps. If you have any questions, make sure you're reaching out to your teacher.